Hey guys, Alex here from Homeschool of Bel Air. On today's video, I'm going to share with you guys the Harcourt Trophies curriculum. If you're interested to see a quick little flip through and a little bit of information on this curriculum, stay tuned. Okay, so one of the main questions I get is where you can purchase this curriculum. You can purchase it through Amazon. Amazon has a lot of links to used vendors that sell used textbooks. So you can usually find it through Amazon pretty easily if you type in Harcourt Trophies. Even if you add the grade that you're looking for, you should be able to find it. I think the hardest part is just figuring out what all you're going to need for each school year. What I've managed to find out is that for every school year, you need 2 textbooks, 2 workbooks, and a spelling practice book. Those are the main 5 components, unless you also want to buy the language handbook. The language handbook is probably the harder thing to find because the cover is different than the regular textbooks and the workbooks. And I'll show you guys that as I go through it. So real quick, what you guys have in front of you is the first grade level, which are the blue books, the second grade level, which are the red books, and the third grade level, which are the yellow books on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first grade level first. And I'm not going to give you guys a complete review because I already have a review on the first grade level books. So I'm going to try to see if I can add that somewhere in here. But I just kind of want to show you the differences when it comes to the readers that are inside the textbooks and a little bit of the activities inside the workbook so you guys can see the grade level and the differences to see where your student might fall in. For me, I personally feel like for my kids, these books are a little advanced. I feel like the first grade level jumped from super simple readers to pretty difficult. I feel like even right now, my first grader is in book number 5 and he has a super hard time reading the stories. I have to almost read into him as a read aloud. So I want to give you guys these examples today and show you guys the stories. So let me go ahead and start with the blue books, which are the first grade level, and show you guys everything that you would have to purchase for the first grade level. Okay, so for the first grade level, you need 5 textbooks. This is what holds all of the readers that you're going to be reading for the whole school year for the first grade level. You also need 2 workbooks, and then you need your spelling practice book and your language handbook. Now, when it comes to this particular grade, I don't have all the components because we're still using it. The only thing I do have is the workbook, which is the workbook for the last 2 books, because right now we're starting actually book 5. But I want to show you guys for each lesson, this is the type of work that you get. So you get spelling practice, phonics practice, grammar, some more phonics, vocabulary, phonics, and more phonics. So this would be one whole entire week. Now let me give you guys a flip through. The language handbook, all it is all of the grammar. So it's extra practice on grammar. You're basically getting 5 pages a week. So you get 1 extra page of grammar for every single day of the week. And even this, we've skipped around quite a bit. Let me show you guys real quick. I don't know if you guys remember, we were actually working out of the Muffet Girl grammar packets for a little while. We stopped using those as well, but I'm trying to get to the areas that he has done. We started doing this again. Okay, so for instance, this was obviously a book. I comb bound it like this because it was just easier that way for him. So for every week, you get a certain grammar theme. So for instance, this particular week, it was one and more than one. So it was like nouns and plural nouns. So if you guys can see for this kind of activity, this is first grade level. I think it's pretty age appropriate. Adrian didn't have too hard of a time working on this. And then you get another page of that. So that would be for the second day, the third day, the fourth day. And then, well, I guess it's 4. You get 4 to 5 because there's some weeks where you get 5 of them. So here, because it's nice and bold, you know that you start your next week. And for the next week, you would start this topic. So it would be special names and titles for people. So it's more on capitalizing the first name. So that is basically how the language handbook looks like. And that is for the first grade level. Again, the language handbook is going to tackle all of your grammar when it comes to the Harcourt Trophies. So let me go ahead and show you guys the readers real quick. And like I said, I have a whole complete review video on the first grade level. So I do want to show you guys the examples of the first story. So the first story in the first textbook is a realistic fiction. It's called The Hat. If you guys can see, it is super simple to read. It's beginning almost like CVC type of words, a couple of sight words, which it does give you an area where, let me show you guys. In this book, the words to remember are pretty much like your high frequency words or your sight words. So this is where I would use sometimes as, I would pull out my flashcards with these 3 sight words or whatever sight words. And we would just kind of review those words per week. So that is the hat, which is, like I said, the first story. Let me show you guys the last story in this book, which I believe was a, yes, nonfiction story. So here you get 4 sight words: by, that, very, and where. And this is a nonfiction story about corn, a cornfield. So you get a little bit of different stories. You get a few that are just like fantasy stories. You get some nonfiction. But as you guys can see, this story gets a little bit, I mean, not super hard, but compared to the first story, it has definitely a little bit more words per story. So let me go ahead and move on. So I'm going to give you guys a quick flip through of book number 2. So book number 2, you do get a little bit more when it comes to the reading part. Let me skip to one of the last stories, which is about, no, I think there's more. Yes, so right here, as you guys can see, when it comes to the story itself, it's a little bit more reading, definitely more reading to do in book number 2. Book number 3 is where it starts to get just a little bit more on the difficult side. You tend to get a lot more words to remember. The stories do tend to get a little bit longer. So again, this is first grade level, and this is the 3rd book. So first grade, this is the 4th book. And on this one, you get me on the map. You get a bed full of cats. So the stories do get a little longer. This is Little Bear, which is the last story we did. As you guys can see, obviously, if you guys are familiar with the Little Bear books, they do become a little bit harder to read. Now, this one here, I did have to help my son quite a bit. The last story in book number 4 is Busy, Busy Bees. We're actually going to be doing this story this week. So as you guys can see, it is pretty, it's a lot more writing, a lot more to read. So it is a lot more to read, as you guys can see, and it is a nonfiction. So again, you get a lot of different types of stories when it comes to the genres of the stories that you're reading. Now, this is book number 5. Now, for book number 5, let me show you guys the first story. So the first story is the story of Bluebird. So here you guys can see, in comparisons to book number 1, which is obviously still first grade level. So, I mean, you guys can see a significant difference when it comes to book number 1 all the way to book number 5. Like I said, my boys have always, my son is showing a little bit more of a difficulty making this big of a jump from going from book 1 to this in the school year. Like I said, you guys can feel it out and see how your first grader, if you feel like your first grader will be able to read all these stories. Let me show you guys real quick the last story from this one. So the last story in book number 5 is Baboon. This is an informational fiction. So here you guys can see the type. So it's a little bit of a longer story, definitely a lot more pages than some of the previous stories. So that is grade level 1. Okay, so for grade 2, you have to purchase the 2 textbooks. Now, when it comes to the textbooks, they do have more stories per book. And you also get the 2 practice books. So this one is just 1 practice book per book. So the one with the tiger, that's for book 1. And then the one with the little lancer, I don't know what kind of animal that is. I don't know what that is. You get book number 2. You get the practice book for number 2, which is Banner Days. For this one, you have your spelling practice book. So it's just 1 spelling practice book. You don't have to get 2. This one handles the whole entire school year. And then your language handbook. Okay, so the main difference with the language handbook for 2nd grade versus 1st grade. 1st grade, it's laid out more like a workbook, where when it goes up to 2nd grade, it's a textbook, and you would need a journal or some kind of notebook to write your answers or whatever it is. So let me go ahead and show you guys real quick what I mean. Not only that, this is something that I've never mentioned before, because I don't use it, but the Harcourt Trophies, if you want to use this as a writing curriculum, you could also use it as a writing curriculum. When you purchase a language handbook, the first part of it, this area here handles your writing. So you have sentences about a picture, writer's journal, paragraph writing, personal story, friendly letter, invitation, thank you notes, envelopes, paragraph. So you can pretty much use this as a writing curriculum, just so you guys know. So now let me go ahead and go into the grammar. So as far as grammar, you handle sentences, nouns, capital letters, abbreviations, showing ownership, pronouns, describing words, verbs, and contractions. So all the little worksheets are in here. Like I said, I don't have my students write in this. We just rewrite it inside of a notebook. So this is how you handle your grammar when it comes to Harcourt Trophies. Now, for every grammar topic, you do get 3 pages. We break them up into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I have little tabs and I let my students know, okay, this is going to be your worksheet. Let me show an example. Like this would be his worksheet for Tuesday. This one would be Wednesday. And then your review would be on Thursday. And the review is basically just a review on the last 2 topics that you've talked about. So that is how we handle our grammar when it comes to Harcourt Trophies. Now, let me show you guys examples of the stories that are in the textbooks. So this is book 1. One thing that I like about the 2nd grade level is that they do give you pictures of all the storybooks that you're going to have in each one of the textbooks. So these are these are the readers that this book is going to have in them. Hopefully you guys can see them okay. I don't want to read all of them. So those are all the stories. So you guys can see, you even get some like from seed to plant. So you get a little bit of everything. Johnny Appleseed, as you guys can see, this theme here is more of a planting type of theme. Okay, so now book 2. Book 2 was a misprint. So this is a front cover, but it actually, the book starts on the back side, which is pretty funny. My son always thought it was pretty funny. So these are the stories that this book has. And then I'll show you examples of the readers themselves. And those there, which are the last ones. So with book 1, you start with the Mixed Up Chameleon. Mixed Up Chameleon, as you guys can see, the font gets a lot smaller. And the story is pretty long. Even though some of the pages don't have much type, the story is pretty long. Let me show you one of the last stories in this book. So one of the last stories in this book is Pumpkin Fiesta. Pumpkin Fiesta, as you guys can see, the story does get a little bit longer. It's actually fairly long, actually, when we think about it. So it's pretty much all those pages there. So it is a lot longer than the even Mixed Up Chameleon. Let me show you guys an example of the vocabulary words you'll be dealing with. So these are the vocabulary words here. So like I said, this is book 1 for grade 2. Now let me show you an example of book 2, grade 2. So let me show you one of the first stories in this book. So the stories get longer. Let me go to the last story. And then the last story, which I believe is the second to last story, is Abuela. What I wanted to pinpoint about this is you guys can see it also gives you a little bit of cultural diversity when it comes to the stories. So the very last story in this book is Ruth Law Thrills the Nation. So that is the last one. So definitely the print is a lot smaller and the story is a lot longer. So yeah, so I hope you guys are getting a pretty good idea as to how this curriculum is laid out. Here's a quick flip through of the practice book for book number 1. So these are the types of activities that you'll be looking forward to. What I like about it is that on the top, it tells you the story and what it's handling. So obviously this one would be for Wilson Sat Alone, and it would handle some of the spelling. For each story, you get between 5 to 6 pages of practice. And it's broken up, like I said, it's broken up in different topics. So like for instance, for the Mixed Up Chameleon, you would get phonogram, more phonogram, spelling, vocabulary on that one, and some grammar on this side. So that is how the lessons are broken up. Also at the back, you also get a vocabulary and comprehension test for each story. So again, it'll tell you the story, that what it's for, and then it'll tell you like your vocabulary part would be, oh, sorry about that. Vocabulary would be here, and then your comprehension would be there. And this one, the comprehension goes a little bit longer. And then usually it'll give you a little area to answer some questions there. And then you move on to the next story. So that is the practice book number 1. Let me show you practice book number 2. Practice book number 2 is laid out exactly the same. So for each story, you get 5 to 6 pages of extra practice. And again, it'll tell you on top exactly what story it's for and what it's handling. So there it's spelling. On this side, you get a little bit of vowel diagraphs. So this would be for the story Mr. Blueberry, or Dear Mr. Blueberry, sorry. And then again, you get your test at the back. And then for the spelling practice book, I believe you get 2 pages per story of additional spelling practice. Let me get to the front. This one, the one thing about this one, it doesn't tell you what stories they're for. So you kind of have to figure out what. So for instance, for the Mixed Up Chameleon, oh, it's actually more than 2 pages. So for Mixed Up Chameleon, I do remember that we're handling the long I sound. So you get this one, extra spelling practice, and this one. So you get 3 pages. The way that I usually break them up is I break them up as in Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday. And that's usually how I do it. And then you move on to the next story. So again, this one handles the spelling practice for both textbooks. So this is the only one that you need. Okay, so this is the 3rd grade level books. Again, for the 3rd grade level, you only get the 2 textbooks. You get the zebras, and then you get the little turtle and hare. And then for that, you also get the practice book for the zebras and the practice book for the little turtle and the hare. Spelling practice would be this one here with the zebras. And remember, the spelling practice handles the whole school year. And then your language handbook, which has a little frog on it. Like I said before, the handbooks are the ones that are hardest to find for the curriculum. And it's mainly because the picture is different. It's not necessarily because they're hard to find. You can find them. It's just knowing what to buy, because obviously it looks way different than all these other books. So it's just a matter of knowing. That's why I'm showing it to you guys. First textbook here. Let me show you real quick the first story, or the stories that it has. So this one has those there. Then it has these other readers here. Those, as you guys can see, a little bit of everything. And that is it for that. So let me show you the first story, Officer Buckle and Gloria. So the font is about the same as the 2nd grade level when it comes to the first story here. It didn't jump too much. The stories are probably just as long as grade level 2, how grade level 2 ended. Let me show you one of the last stories here. So as you guys can see with the vocabulary words, they're a little bit longer, a little bit harder. The font is a lot smaller and the story is a lot longer. So as you guys can see that, the text is super tiny. Look at that. So this was the 3rd grade level, and this is the last, or the second to last story in book number 1. So the last story is actually a fables story. So it's a bunch of different little fables. As you guys can see. So like I said, these books handle a little bit of everything when it comes to genres. Okay, so that is book 1. So book number 2, let me show you the stories this one handles. So that one handles those readers there. Sorry, didn't mean to hit the camera. Those there. These here. And you guys could always pause if you guys want to read those stories to see what it has. Okay, so the first story in book number 2 is a Native American tale. So as you guys can see, the font is pretty small. The story is actually somewhat long. Not super long, but you know, a little bit longer. And then let me show you one of the last stories in this book. So one of the stories, and I try to tab them out, but I'm just horrible at that. The armadillo from Armadillo is one of the last stories in here. So there's the font, so you guys can see. Yeah, so as you guys can see, the story is, the type is small and the stories are a little bit long. So that is the 2 textbooks there. Let me show you the workbooks real quick, little flip through. So practice book number 1. So as you guys can see, the font in this one is a little bit smaller. There's probably going to be a little bit more actual writing to do. The spelling practice is a little bit different. Again, you get your spelling, or not spelling test, but your comprehension test at the back. So it's pretty much the same. You get a section for vocabulary and then a section for comprehension. And then book number, oops, wrong one. So book number 2, very similar. Again, a lot more writing. Your spelling words are longer and more. And then the test part, again, you get your vocabulary and your comprehension. So that is workbook number 2. So then spelling practice. Again, your spelling practice, the type is a little bit smaller. And I believe here again, you get 2 to 3 pages, yes, per story of extra spelling practice. And again, this handles the spelling practice for the whole entire school year. That's what I want to show you guys. I did notice that book number, the spelling practice, towards the end, it does start to get into cursive. So some of the spelling words are actually written in cursive. See, so it'll give you one print and cursive. Okay, so that is the spelling practice book. And then the language handbook, again, looks a lot like the 2nd grade level. So you have the writing part. So again, if you don't want to buy a separate writing curriculum, you could actually use this as your writing curriculum as well. It gives you, if I could find it, I'll try to speed it up. There you go. So in this one, you have writing to entertain or express. You have writing to describe, writing to inform or persuade, and everyday writing. So, and it gives you the different examples, and your student can obviously get information from all this so they can do their own writing. And then we go into the grammar usage, which is... So for grammar, we handle sentences, parts, nouns, abbreviations, pronouns, adjectives, verbs, contractions, and adverbs. So like I said, all the activities are in here. And like I said, we use a separate notebook and we do all of these grammar pages on a notebook. And a lot of it is just fixing sentences. Okay, so real quick, just so you guys can see. So this is their grammar notebook. This is my... 3rd graders this year that he's doing with this one, just to give you guys an example. So his writing is not the best, but this is how we do it. So I have him write the topic that we handled. So for instance, this one was sentences, and then the page number that it was on. And then here he writes the numerical, so 1, 2, 3. So here he just had to write yes or no if it was a complete sentence. And then here he had to rewrite the sentences correctly, and so forth. So this is how we do it on the notebook. And that is, like I said, these pages here. So that is how we handle it when it comes to the grammar portion of it. So that is the 3 different Harcourt Trophies curriculums. All right, guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any questions, feel free and leave them down below. I really, truly hope I answered everybody's questions on this curriculum. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.